This is Artemis, a very special little baby tortoise that was born with a very peculiar anomaly. In this video, we're going to show you what we did to give Artemis quality of life. About a month ago, I was walking around outside in the pens, purposely looking to see if any babies had hatched naturally, and that's when I discovered Artemis. Artemis came up out of the ground. This brave little tortoise incubated all on its own throughout the course of the summer, and then came up out of its nest, and that's when I noticed it. Now, Artemis is an eastern Hermann's tortoise, an extremely hardy species of Mediterranean tortoise, and his family of tortoises happens to derive from Greece, so we named him or her Artemis after the Greek goddess of wildlife. So I'm inside our eastern Hermann's tortoise pen right here, and this is quite possibly the mother of Artemis. And the reason I say that is because every female Hermann's tortoise in this pen is known for laying at least 2 clutches every season of eggs. Well, this girl right here, we must have missed it, and that happens. So I'm thinking that it is her second clutch that Artemis came from. Now you can see she's perfectly formed, she's perfectly healthy, and as are all the tortoises in this small group of eastern Hermann's here at Garden State Tortoise. Nothing has changed with this group in more than a decade. There are no newcomers, nobody has left, no one has gotten sick, there's been nothing, and this is the very first time that an anomaly like this has happened with one of their babies. When I found Artemis, this little tortoise was upside down, desperately trying to get itself out of the nest. And I thought right away, this is really weird. I've never found one upside down like that, coming out of a nest like that. Well, when I looked closer, I noticed why. Artemis has a very interesting anomaly back here. If you look at the tortoise's back legs, they are completely backwards, where the feet are actually touching. The nails at least are touching there. The tail is clear and the animal can defecate and urinate no problem, but it seems as though Artemis really has no movement in those legs. So first and foremost, we wanted to get a medical opinion, a professional opinion. So we got Artemis to our veterinarian pretty much immediately. There we had x-rays done of both Artemis and a normally formed Hermann's tortoise of the exact same age so that they could really take a close look at what was going on internally and with the bone structure of both tortoises. There needed to be a comparison to really see what's going on inside. So as of now, what the veterinarians and we could see clearly on the x-rays is that there is asymmetry inside Artemis when it comes to the pelvic area and the spaces between the bones and the actual overall design when compared to a normally formed tortoise, again of the same age and species, where everything is very symmetrical and spacing is correct. Because Artemis is so young, it's possible that things could change as the tortoise grows. So our veterinarian is not 100% sure what's going to happen here as far as, any kind of movement or mobility later on in life. But as of right now, Artemis cannot under any circumstances move either of the rear legs. So aside from the obvious, Artemis got a very clean bill of health. Artemis can defecate and urinate, and the tortoise is also very capable of eating. It took a little while to get going, but the tortoise is eating well and actually already has its first growth ring. So things are looking up, and our veterinarian did feel that this tortoise deserves a shot. And you know what? So do we. So we put together something based on a friend's idea that proved to be very successful, and we're going to show you exactly how we did it. So this isn't the first tortoise that needed help in this way. If you remember a special animal by the name of Helix, who was a marginated tortoise, he belonged to Randy Betts of Tortstork. Randy came up with the idea to take the little mini skateboard wheels, those little fingerboards, remove them, and then use glue dots or double-sided tape to safely put it on the tortoise's plastron so that it could get around that way. There's a number of stories out there how people somehow got these animals that are either missing limbs or have anomalies like Artemis and Helix to walk again. And well, this is the exact idea that we used. Helix was a very influential animal where there were a lot of things that came from the success of getting that little tortoise to finally have the mobility it deserved, including a series of books, a foundation, and more. So, how do you give a teeny tiny tortoise that can't walk wheels so it can walk? Well, by using Randy's idea, we started with these little mini skateboards or fingerboards. You take one and you simply pull off the grip. It's basically a piece of adhesive. It comes right off. And then the kit comes with a tiny little screwdriver so that from the top of the deck, you can unscrew the brackets and the wheels. And then once they come off, you remove the screws and you simply take a piece of double-sided tape, cut it to size so it's nice and small, and you put it on the top of the bracket, and then you just have to carefully situate it to the really rear portion of the plastron. But it's kind of an art there. You really need to make sure that it, A, will allow the tortoise to pull itself easily and, well, basically be on wheels, but also so that the tail is clear so that when the animal needs to go to the bathroom, it can easily do so. We use the double-sided tape because after corresponding with our veterinarian about it, it seemed like the safest idea, and it can be taken off and on. We're not gonna leave the wheels on Artemis at all times because the tortoise could flip over or get stuck somewhere and the wheels could actually harm it. So basically, this is a monitoring period. As the tortoise is in its fragile stage of life and starts to grow, we have to remove the wheels periodically and really just kind of constantly keep this tortoise under really strict supervision so that it doesn't get itself hurt. We're not going to keep a water dish inside with it. We will give it supervised soaks so that the animal can get sufficient hydration. And as far as the bedding goes, Artemis is simply living on paper towels right now. Now, normally that would not be a suitable bedding for a Hermann's tortoise of any age, but because of Artemis Anomaly, we have to be as careful as possible to make sure there are no accidents. Because again, the whole purpose here is to give this tortoise some quality of life. So as Artemis grows, the hope is that, well, maybe at some point there'll be some kind of mobility that's gained back in those rear limbs, but very well may not happen. Artemis isn't feeling any pain though. This tortoise is behaving very naturally otherwise. Again, it poops, it pees, it eats, it sleeps, it drinks, it basks. And if it were able to burrow, if we gave it a deep substrate, I'm sure it would. As Artemis gets bigger, we'll see that the animal's a little bit more self-sufficient and we won't have to keep such close tabs, but chances are this tortoise is never going to be able to live with the group of adults that produced it. Despite being known as slow, tortoises do need to move around, and they're actually more active than a lot of people think. So it's really important that Artemis gets this exercise because regardless, the muscles in those rear legs are going to become atrophied, but the front limbs will not. Artemis was simply only able to drag him or herself around very slowly and in very little spurts. Basically, the tortoise would just go around in a little circle and that was it. Artemis has to learn how to use these wheels properly. This is totally unnatural for a tortoise, but this is a brand new discovery because, well, Artemis is figuring out, hey, I can go forward. I can get there and get here. And as time goes on, the tortoise will learn how to utilize this better. Now, without these wheels, if Artemis just kept dragging himself around, guess what would happen? It would be too abrasive on the plastron, and eventually that could lead to shell rot. Now, especially when tortoises are babies, that shell is not solid bone yet, so that's a big deal. It's important to make sure that Artemis is not constantly dragging the bottom shell, tail, and legs on the ground because that would lead to severe health issues later on. So by periodically propping the tortoise up on these wheels and allowing it to move about freely, well, we're going to avoid those things. Artemis is really an incredible little tortoise. I mean, this little animal definitely has the will to live, and it's feeling no pain right now, and we're really happy to see it starting to get around like this already. This doesn't have to be the end for this animal. And like our veterinarian said, it's worth a shot. This animal otherwise is perfectly healthy. It is not a wild animal. It was never going to be in the wild. It was born here in captivity from perfectly healthy adults. And just by chance, I happened to be at the right place at the right time, checking the pen for babies. And there was little Artemis coming up out of the ground, upside down, basically saying, I got a problem here. So, that is the story so far of little Artemis, the baby Eastern Hermann's tortoise that now has wheels, and we're hoping that the future with this tortoise is bright. As time goes on, we will share the progress of this special little animal with all of you, and hey, don't forget that next month, Casey and I are going to be launching our first ever Patreon. We would love to have you guys on board to help support the future of Artemis, Otis, everybody here at Garden State Tortoise.
Do you like turtles? Yeah?
Yes.